I want you to imagine sitting in the back row of a church. Hat pulled low, dark glasses, a scarf around your face despite the warmth of the room. Sitting between two strangers who do not know you and have no reason to look at you twice. And at the front of that church, a photograph of your face, flowers, a casket, your name on a program being held by people who loved you, your own funeral. I was 31 years old when I sat in that back row. I was not dead, clearly, but the people in that church did not know that. They had been told I was gone. They had been given a story, a careful, partial, not entirely honest story, and they had gathered to grieve me. I had made a decision 6 weeks earlier to disappear. Not permanently, not recklessly, with a plan and a reason and the particular desperation of someone who has run out of other options. I had not planned to attend the funeral, but I had driven past the church, and I had seen the cars, and some pull I cannot fully explain, had made me park and walk in and take that seat in the back row. And what I heard over the next 90 minutes changed the entire direction of my life. This is that story. To understand why I disappeared, you need to understand what I was disappearing from. I had spent the 3 years before that funeral in a state of quiet collapse. On the outside, completely fine. A job, an apartment, a social life that functioned. The performance of a person who has everything more or less together. On the inside, something that had been slowly coming apart for longer than I wanted to admit. A relationship that had ended badly and taken more of me than I had understood at the time. A career that had stalled in ways I could not seem to fix regardless of how much effort I applied. A creeping, persistent sense that the life I was living was not the life I was supposed to be living, and that the gap between those two things was getting wider rather than narrower. I had not told anyone how bad it had gotten. This is the thing I most want you to understand. I had been carrying all of it completely alone. Not because the people around me were incapable of helping, but because I had spent so long being the person who was fine that I did not know how to be the person who was not. The decision to disappear came after a night that I am not going to describe in detail because the details are private and because they're not the point. The point is that I had arrived at a place where I genuinely believed that the people in my life would be better off without the burden of me in it. I know now how wrong that belief was. I did not know it then. I packed a bag. I drove to a small town 4 hours away where I knew nobody. I left a note that was, I understand now, deeply unfair to the people who found it. And I disappeared. The 6 weeks, I was gone with the strangest of my life. I rented a room in a small guest house. I worked at a cafe for cash. I walked a lot. I thought more than I had ever thought about anything. Slowly, circularly, without pressure, in the way that thinking happens when you remove every distraction and obligation and simply sit with yourself. I did not contact anyone. This was the part that I am most ashamed of, not the disappearing itself, but the silence. The knowledge that people who loved me were searching and grieving and not knowing while I was sitting in a cafe 4 hours away eating toast and staring out of a window. About 4 weeks and I started to come back to myself. Not dramatically, gradually. The way a room becomes lighter, not through a switch, but through the slow arrival of morning. I started to think about going back, about what going back would look like, about what I would need to say and to whom and in what order. And then, on a Tuesday morning, 5.5 weeks after I had left, I searched my own name and found the announcement, a memorial service. My name, the church I had attended as a child. That Saturday, I sat with my phone in my hands for a very long time, and then I got in my car that I arrived early and sat in the car across the street, watching people go in. I recognized almost everyone. My parents, my brother, friends from university, from work, from different chapters of my life that I had not realized overlapped until I saw them entering the same door. People I had not seen in years. People I had assumed had forgotten about me entirely. The church filled. I sat in my car and I thought I should drive away. This is not something I should see. This is not mine to take from them. And then I thought, but I'm not dead. And if I am going to go back, and I had decided sitting in that car that I was going to go back, then I need to understand what I'm going back to. I pulled the hat low, the dark glasses, the scarf. I walked in and took the last seat in the back row. The service had already started. The first person to speak was my mother. I had braced myself for this. My relationship with my mother had been complicated for years. Loving but strained, warm in moments and cold in others. I had told myself, in the story I had been running in my head for 3 years, that she found me difficult, that I was a source of stress to her, that my presence in her life was more burden than gift. My mother stood at the front of that church, and she talked about me for 12 minutes. She talked about the person I had been as a child, specific things, small things, things I had completely forgotten, a drawing I had made her at age 6, a sentence I had said at age 9 that she had written down because she wanted to remember it, the way I had looked at her on the morning of my first day of school. She talked about being proud of me, not in the vague, generalized way that parents speak about children in public, in the specific way, naming things I had done, choices I had made, moments she had observed from a distance and stored because they had meant something to her. She said, I did not tell her enough. That is the thing I will carry. I thought she knew. I assumed she could see it. I did not say it out loud enough, and now I cannot say it at all. I pressed my hand over my mouth in the back row. My brother spoke next. My brother and I had a relationship that functioned mostly through humor, jokes, banter, the kind of sibling communication that says I love you without ever saying it. I had interpreted this over the years as meaning that the depth was not there, that we were close in the casual way, but not in the real way. He stood at that podium and he fell apart. He started twice and stopped. The third time he managed to keep going. He talked about things I had done for him that I had forgotten, times I had shown up for him that I had not registered as significant. He said, she always made me feel like I was not alone. I did not realize until now that I never told her she did the same for me. Then my friend Kieran spoke. We had known each other for 12 years. In my story about myself, Kieran was someone I had drifted from, someone who had their own life and their own priorities and who I assumed thought of me as peripheral. Kieran said she was the person I called when things were bad. Every time, without exception, she answered every time. She never made me feel like a burden. I don't know who I call now. I sat in that back row and I listened to person after person stand up and describe someone I did not fully recognize, someone who mattered, someone who was present in people's lives in ways she had never understood, someone whose absence had created a hole that nobody knew how to fill. They were talking about me, and I had had no idea. I left before the service ended. I walked out of that church and I sat in my car and I allowed myself to feel everything that I had just heard. It was not comfortable. It was not the clean, warm feeling that you might imagine. It was complicated and overwhelming, and it involved a grief of its own. Grief for the years I had spent believing a story about myself and my place in other people's lives that was so far from the truth. I thought about my mother saying, I did not tell her enough. I thought about my brother falling apart at a podium. I thought about Kieran saying, I don't know who I call now. And I thought, they're going to keep feeling this. Every day, unless I go back. I called my mother from the car park of the church. She answered on the second ring. Her voice was the voice of someone who has been crying for 6 weeks. I said, Mom, it is me. I am alive. I am coming home. The sound she made is something I will carry for the rest of my life. Going back was not simple. There was relief, enormous, immediate, physical relief from the people who loved me. My mother, my brother, friends who drove to my parents' house that evening when the word spread and sat around a kitchen table and looked at me like they were checking I was real. There was also anger, justified anger. My brother held me for a long time and then pulled back and looked at me and said, Don't you ever do that again. Not a question, a statement. I said, I won't. I am sorry. There was a period of time, several months, where I was rebuilding trust with people who had been through something significant because of my choice. I did not rush that process. I did not ask for forgiveness before I had earned it. I showed up consistently and honestly and let the time do what time does. I went into therapy the week I came back. Properly this time, not the occasional session I had done before, but the committed, regular, honest kind that actually changes things. My therapist helped me understand the story I had been telling about myself, the story in which I was peripheral, burdensome, easily replaced. She helped me trace where that story had come from and why I had believed it so completely. That work took 2 years. It was the most important work of my life. I want to tell you what I know now that I did not know then. The story we tell about ourselves, about our value, about our place in other people's lives, about whether we matter and to whom and how much, is not always accurate. In fact, it is often the least accurate story in the room. because we construct it from the inside, from our own fears and our own blind spots and our own history. And we do not have access to what other people actually carry about us, the memories they keep, the ways we have shaped them, the hole that our absence would create. My mother had been storing a drawing I made at age 6. My brother had been calling me when things were bad for 12 years. Kieran had no idea who to call when I was gone. None of that was visible to me from inside my own head. I had built a version of my life that did not include any of it. I am not telling you this story to romanticize what I did. Disappearing caused real harm to real people who loved me, and I carry the weight of that. There was nothing wise or brave about it. What I am telling you is what came out of it. The understanding that the version of yourself you carry in your head is not the whole story. That the people around you may be holding a version of you that is larger and more significant than anything you have given yourself credit for. You do not have to attend your own funeral to find that out. You can ask. You can tell. You can have the conversations, the ones that say, I am struggling and I need you to know and I need you to tell me what you see because I cannot see it clearly from here. Those conversations are available to you right now. Please have them if you are struggling right now. If any part of the story felt familiar in ways that go beyond the story, please reach out to someone. A friend, a family member, a professional, anyone. You are not as invisible as you feel. I promise you that. Drop a comment below. I read every single one. Like this video if any part of this stayed with you. Subscribe because these conversations need to happen out loud. I will see you in the next one.